Alrighty, welcome to the Excitable Soul Podcast. Here we are interested in all things purpose. We want to know where and how people find meaning and connection in their lives. In every episode, we're going to be hearing the real life stories of how people have uncovered, understood, and unleashed their own unique sense of purpose. Our hope is that we can all learn from the stories and the journeys of our guests so that we can better find a sense of purpose in our own lives. I'm host James Glover, performance coach and purpose nerd. I'm incredibly excited to be exploring these stories with you. So let's get going, shall we? So in our podcast, we are interested in people being able to share stories about who they are rather than what they do. We want to get under the surface of what makes people feel a sense of meaning and connection to the things that really matter to them, the experiences that have shaped their lives. And actually, we're asking some pretty deep questions pretty quickly of our guests when they come on to this program. So we thought with episode 1, we should put ourselves in that situation so we can feel the pain, discomfort, and vulnerability and try and be as courageous as we're asking everybody else to be. So I guess that's our intention for this first episode is to kind of follow the process and share some of the insights that we're hoping to hear from some of the phenomenal guests that we have lined up in our podcast. But one of the things that we were discussing before the official press record was how do you get to that kind of meaty stuff straight away? And so I asked you a really awkward question that put you on the back foot. So I think we should probably go there again really quickly, just so that more people can share in the experience, which is, before we get to the kind of the significant, the important elements, maybe we should just start with that really awkward question that people ask when you meet them for the first time, typically at dinner parties, but also, kind of gatherings with children where there are other adults and they're kind of trying to figure out who else is it in the garden while the party is taking place, which is, who are you and what do you do? How do you answer that question in those random moments when people immediately put you on the spot?
Well, that is usually depending on the situation, isn't it? So I would normally go, I'm Jimbo's sister. That's how you should know me, because you know him. So however I am associated to however I got there would be my first thing. And then I am just a passionate, excited, creative individual that tries to do that wherever. So I'm a primary school teacher, I am an artist, I am a curriculum consultant, and I'm just here to have a really good chat with you and get a feeling for what this is going to be like before we do this with the big time people, I suppose. So I feel a little bit more prepared. That's how I'm looking at it. This is a way of me
Nice. I love that.
Know what I'm talking about.
And I immediately want to go to wow, interesting. The way in which you describe yourself depends on how you arrived in that situation. So who you connected to or who you related to rather than just who you are. So immediately my intrigue is piqued, but I'll park all of that.
Yeah. Simmer down. I've not got to you yet.
Yeah. Well, on that note,
who are you and why are you here?
Yeah, which is a particularly awkward question, because when you turn around to most people and go, oh yeah, I'm a coach, I'm a performance coach, they either have some idea of what coaching is, and that elicits one of two reactions: interest or complete disconnection. But most of the time, people have no idea what a performance coach is. So the follow-up question is, what's one of those? And I find it inordinately difficult to describe what I do. So
what is it you actually do, James? What
ask
that?
some questions and listen real hard. It's to help. So yeah, I'm a performance coach, I think, is my trade, or how I would describe my trade. And normally the kind of the go-to is, oh yeah, I spent best part of a decade working with Olympic athletes, because people go, ooh, and then you go, oh yeah, it was during the London Olympics. Ooh, yeah, I went and I saw this. And then it's off me and we're on to what people went to see at the London Olympic Games, and then we can kind of get into the whole conversation. So yeah, in terms of our
our audience, I would say I'm a helper. I am interested in being able to coach people, support people, be on a journey with people where they're able to kind of just experience more and make more things possible in their lives. And that I've become a real purpose nerd, because what I've realized in this world of total carnage and chaos is that the answer, whether that's to the complexity of the marketplaces that businesses are operating in, whether that's the volatility of people's experience of just trying to live and survive in their own lives, whether or not that's, you know, the growing artificial intelligence that kind of feels like it's coming over the hill. The answer for all of us is just to be more human, and that for me there's nothing more profoundly human than purpose. So yeah, become a purpose nerd, and you know, dragging you along for the ride
Willingly, I'll add.
yeah,
willingly.
so willingly
Yeah,
dragging. Yeah, it's not.
yeah.
Do you have to say that out loud? She's chosen to be here, ladies and gentlemen.
I have not been
sibling
coerced.
bullying.
Yeah.
She's okay. All right then. So there in this podcast, our intention really is to be able to create a bit of a format that you as our listeners can come to rely upon, in that we're going to frame similar types of questions to everybody that comes on the podcast with us, but the stories that they're going to be able to tell around those questions are going to be distinctly individual. They're going to be shaped by the experiences that they've had in their lives, the journey that they've been on, the adventures that they've had, the things that have been distinctly challenging, or, you know, required overwhelming courage. And so we wanted to kind of really test out these questions in this first podcast. And the questions are really based around three different things. So at the Excitable Soul, we know that there are three really important phases of the purpose journey. There's purpose discovery. For us, everybody has a sense of purpose. It is there. It is already there. It's locked in. It's just a case of being able to find it. So it's not about invention or creation, it's discovery. So we're going to be asking some questions around connecting the dots around the experiences that have shaped the people who are coming onto this podcast. The next step for us is about how and where we find meaning. And what we're interested in is the point at which people started to find meaning from the inside out, rather than being governed by the expectation of others or the world around them. The choices became theirs. And the third element of this is leaps of faith. Where did our guests just make more things possible in their lives because they went into the unknown with belief around what might be possible, when they'd never actually necessarily done anything before like that? So we'll probably start, I think, Beck, if you're happy to, with, you know, the connecting of the dots, just because that always feels like a way to get to know ourselves and each other, in that, you know, when we share some of the experiences that have truly shaped who we are in the world, you know, those moments are really important to us, and therefore have meaning and significance. They are meaningful, and often they're connected to things that are really important to us. So I'm wondering, are there any particular places that you want to start around connecting the dots? Any stories, or, you know, do you want to play paper, scissors, stone to see who has to go first? I'm totally up for
that. No, I'm going to fire a question at you first.
Okay.
And then we'll fight for it later.
All right, cool.
So my first question is going to be, who in your life has helped to make you the person that you are? And can you give sort of specific examples of where they've really impacted, or something that they've done has really impacted on you?
Yeah, you went for the heart with the first question. Wallet. Thanks. So we're going to be crying from minute 5 of this podcast, probably through to the end. Yeah, I think, wow, where to begin in answering that question? I think I've been really fortunate and have spent quite a lot of time thinking about the people who have had a positive impact on me and how I want to be able to pay those experiences forward to others. I've benefited basically because of the good fortune and belief from other people. So how can I then provide that in some way, shape, or form to others? One of our first guests, John Gomes, is one of those individuals, and his wife Sally Ann, like, immeasurably have influenced my life in a number of different ways, predominantly just being able to create a sense of patience and calm in places that are total chaos, and learn how to deal with life's multitude of challenges. But I don't think I could get away from answering that question straight off the bat without talking about mum and dad.
Can't steal my answers, by the way. I shouldn't have asked you first.
I just can't. I think from Dad's perspective, there are probably 2 things. One, really quick and simple. He has shown and given unwavering love. Unwavering love. I can remember from a really young age him saying, nothing that you will ever do, you could do, you wouldn't be able to do anything that would stop me from loving you.
Yeah.
And now as a parent, I say that to the kids all the time.
Yeah, same.
All the
Absolutely
time.
Same.
Yeah. He's like, wow, that's kind of the Harry Potter shield of armor that his mum puts on him in that kind of moment that he gets the scar, isn't it? Like that's what then you then carry through life when you have one of your parents that says something like that to you. So that for sure. And then just the fact that he used to work away a lot when I was really little, and I don't even know how much you remember of him working away a lot because of how old you were. But the fact that he used to work, when he used to go away, he used to turn around to me and go, right, you're now the man of the house, so I need you to look after your mum and your brother, and then when you came along, your brother and sister. And I still remember the feeling of my chest like puffing out. Dad says I'm the man of the house.
Yeah.
And
you grew like 10 feet.
Yeah, totally. And obviously at 6 I didn't carry the real responsibility of being the man of the house, but I also carried the responsibility of being the man of the house, and so wanted to be really helpful to mum all of the time. And then whenever we'd come back and mum would go, and Jimbo did this and he did that and he did the other, my chest would go out again. I'd be like, all right, cool. So that hard-baked a sense of responsibility and wanting to do mum and dad proud, which is both a blessing and a curse, right? Because it plays out in lots and lots and lots of really wonderful ways. But also, if you overplay a sense of responsibility or overplay wanting to make other people proud, where are some of the places that you can go to in that regard? So, and I'm sure we can kind of get into that conversation later. But so Dad for sure. And mum, I don't even know where to begin with being able to describe the impact that mum has had in shaping who I feel I am in the world. Other than it was, total and complete backing, and complete support. I don't know whether you noticed this, and mum will be like, we're going to get in trouble straight off the bat of the first episode if they listen, but I was about 30 before I realized that mum never really says I love you on the phone. I just always assumed that she did, and it turns out she really doesn't.
Did you hear Joseph talking about this when we met up yesterday?
No.
So
Joe's our brother. He's kind of in between the two of us.
He'd phoned mum, and mum thought it was quite an odd phone call because, like, right off the bat, he'd gone, do you know what, mum, I really love you, like, I really love you loads. And Mum was like, well, that's nice, son. And then he was like, yes, I win. And he was in the car with somebody and he'd bet them that Mum wouldn't respond with I love you. So they'd had this conversation and Mum had reprimanded him correctly for betting about these things, and then Mum phoned back immediately afterwards to go, I really love you, son. I really love you. So they'd had this whole conversation based on the fact. But yeah, it's important to say, isn't it, that Mum shows it in every fibre of her being, in every
act.
Yeah,
every act. Like she is the living embodiment of deeds, not words. The living embodiment of deeds, not words. Like I remember being at under-8s football, and there was a kid in the group who was looking to have a bit of a rumble with me and my best friend Sam, and Mum was coming to pick us up, and she saw it from the top of the hill, and what she was witnessing was obviously, you know, not she wasn't making her too happy. And then the kid's dad got involved because he was the coach, and he was, you know, drawing out lines for us to have some kind of boxing match. And my mum was like, whoa. So she came down the hill. I still have this image of her coming down off the hill, you know, in the Lord of the Rings, right? In the second Lord of the Rings movie, where they're kind of behind that wall in that castle, and Gandalf turns up on the morning of like the 5th. I look to the sun on the morning of the 5th day, or he says something along those lines. And the sun rises, and over the hill come like thousands of horsemen, and they come charging down the hill. Like that's the image I have of Mum coming down the hill to just take this guy out.
Immediately, just sorry to interrupt, but immediately my head goes to Harry Potter and the final. Not my daughter, you. We're allowed to swear on this, but that would be my image of Mum at that moment. Weasley. Go for it. Sorry,
but it's things like that, like springing to our defense, you know. But also, it was never unjustified in terms of springing to our defense. So I got my first ever after school detention for not doing my maths homework, and Miss Brown, who is, you know, continues to be a big influence in our life, you know, some 35 years after leaving school, she used to give after school detentions out because, you know, if you didn't do your homework, that was the outcome. And there had been a reason why I hadn't done it, and I was 100% convinced that Mum was going to vindicate me in this wrongdoing and injustice of me getting my first ever after school detention. So I go home, Mum writes this note, hands me this note. I go in the next day and I can't wait to give it to the teacher, hand it over. She reads it. This massive smile comes on her face, and I'm immediately going, oh, shit. Something is awry here. It turns out Mum had written a letter going, if you want to keep James after school every night, you do so. He's got some lessons to learn about how he needs to do his homework. Devastated. Totally devastated. But that's how she was able to, you know, ensure that we knew I'm there for the proper stuff, 100%. But, you know, you step out of line with teachers, you know, you're going to get put back in line pretty quick.
Well, that's about helping shape it, like how you walk a fine line in life, isn't it? You know, I am confident in the decisions that I make, because when I'm doing the right thing, I know that I've got the backing. And if I do the wrong thing, then I'm still loved. And you know, and I'm supported, but I will face the consequences. Yeah,
totally. And I don't know, there are thousands of Eve Glover stories that we can tell, but you know, that it's just the love in every act. And now that she's a grandparent, it's like she's turned the volume up to 10, and where there was any kind of balance with us, with the kind of the love and the care and the opportunity, there is nothing but love and care and opportunity with the kids. And we know that because the amount of pom bears they get through and the amount of screen time they have, like none of that would have been possible for us at all. But that's where she's gone to. So I can't go beyond those guys, really, if I'm completely honest. But you know, same question for you, or is there maybe it's not a person that's helped shape, maybe there was a kind of a pivotal moment in your life where you realized nothing would ever be the same again?
Okay, I've got two different answers to those. So quickly on the pupil, it would have to be the same. And for similar reasons, really. So for Dad, it is, I would have quoted exactly the same thing, and I say the same thing to my children, and they use that as a barometer. So when they're in trouble, they'll go, so Mum, you know, when you say there's nothing I could ever do to make you stop loving me, and you're like, what have you done? But yes, so my children use it in a slightly different way. But with Dad, it was also things like, when you are so distraught as a child, you know, so upset, so sort of overcome with frustration and anger, as I was as a little red-headed child, with sort of like tears streaming down my face and snot, and you're like and can't talk, then Dad would always say, and probably still would say, as and when I get into those states as an adult, can't understand what you're saying. When you're talking like that, like you've got to calm down for me to be able to hear you. And that was always the thing. It was never, I'll calm down, or you're overreacting, or stop that silly noise, or whatever. It was always, I need to hear you, you know, you need to calm down so I can help you, so that we can communicate. So that was a huge thing for me, that it was always, I will be there and we'll get through it together. You need to calm down so that we can do this logically. And that is Dad to a T. So Dad sort of, he's wise, he's clever, he's a problem solver, and he does that quite introvertedly. So he's quiet. He's a lot of the time.
Owl and spirit animal, isn't he? Couldn't have been more perfect when we did that.
As opposed to what are you, James? Butterfly?
Well, thank you for bringing that to the attention.
Sorry, but you led right into that. Like, anyway,
yeah, I did.
Another story for another time, perhaps.
No, I'm gonna own it, because that's really important. And also, I led with my chin, so there's an important lesson in this process. Rebecca is quicker than you are. Remember that. Yes. So it's probably about 4 years ago now, because it was Easter time. I found this spirit animal questionnaire online. No idea how that became a thing, but for a couple of days it really was. And I completed it, and I was really excited to see what kind of spirit animal I would be. And turns out I am
well, let's just set the scene. Sorry, with Mum being a protective bear, and me being obviously a feisty tiger, and your wife was something cool as well, wasn't she? And then what were you?
She was total. She was sea turtle. And Dad was a wise owl. Like, the problem was, all of these things were absolutely nailed on. Like, all the characteristics were, like, the way in which we'd all answered the questionnaire, it was brilliant, really brilliant, which made it all the more difficult for me to own the fact that I'm a freaking butterfly. My spirit animal is a butterfly.
It was a good day. It was such a good day. Anyway, back to my story.
Yeah. So Dad being wise.
Yeah, and introverted. So it doesn't matter what it is. Like, if something big's happened, like we've talked about Mum always being there, like any situation, she'll be there to defend and to back you up and to lead the way. And you wheel Dad out, he's the big guns. Do you know what I mean? If something, like, we've gone too far now, I'm bringing Tony out, kind of thing. Yeah. But actually, Dad sort of like processes things quite quietly, or if he's figuring out how to fix something or to make something or anything at all, and he hums to himself. So he'll sort of like, what if I, yes, that would work, and he sort of like talks internally. Yeah. And then he'll go away and do it, or he'll come out with like the most profound thing, or you'll be kind of like, yes, that is the solution to the problem, or he'll ask just the right question to sort of like elicit the right response. So I think for him, it's that sort of there is real gravitas in knowing what you're talking about, and for taking the time to breathe and to turn around and go, this is the situation and this is the right way forward, and taking in the views of the people around you. Is huge. And that idea that our opinions mattered from a very small age.
Oh yeah, massively. Always sat around the table. Yeah. Always felt a valued member at the table. like you mattered.
Yeah, absolutely. And they would talk about the news of the day or some sort of issue that was happening, and they would explain it, and they would be very passionate about their views. It wasn't like they held back on that. They didn't.
Opposing views 9 times out of 10.
Yeah. But then it would be like, well, what do you think? And you were never made to feel silly or feel like you didn't know what you were talking about. You would put your views out, and then they would question it and challenge it. And it was very much so actually it's good to ask questions, it's good to find out, all of those things. And then when he's doing something, he does it well, and he'll go, God, you're good, Glover, in the same way that he goes, God, you're good looking, Glover, and all that kind of stuff. So
just to be clear for everybody listening and watching, Dad is referring to himself in those moments, not the person that maybe doing something.
Absolutely, every time. And then for Mum, same thing. I like to think, I've joked in the past about being Boudica. I am Boudica, long flowing red hair, ready to go into battle to do justice. But realistically, Mum's Boudica.
Yeah.
And Mum wouldn't need
Your
to go and
Boudica's
rally.
sidekick, who we haven't, history doesn't remember.
Yeah, I'm in the back going, what she said.
That's my mum, y'all.
Yeah, she wouldn't even need to go and rally the other troops. She could take on the Romans and defeat them all by herself, and there would be no coming back from it. The Romans would be gone.
Snuffed out.
But I think it's her passion for people. So we talked about her defending us. It's not family, it's anybody. She will stand in front of buses to protect anybody because she's got a fierce sense of what's right and what's just, and she loves people. So listening to her talk about work is huge for me. So sat around the dinner table, and she would be talking about the kid that everyone's given up on, that they all get sent to Mrs. Glover, or with severe special needs, who frightens the people around them. And she would talk with such love and such joy about how she'd done whatever she'd done to win them round, and that they knew they were happy when they were sent to her, because although the messing about stopped, they knew that they were seen and that they were cared for, and that they could move forward. And her talking about some of her lessons. So there's a distinct, I won't go into it in full detail, but she was Ofsteded once, and she took a risk with a lesson that she did, and it could have gone wrong on so many different levels in so many different ways, but she nailed it. And even the kids were like, oh my gosh. And even the inspector was like, let me read out my notes. And it was this sort of like discovery thing. And her pride, not in having done well in Ofsted could have, could have been there or not, but we won't go into that either. But it was that passion for what she did. And
I love the story that she tells of in her first job. So she's from Leeds. She first in the family to go to university in Newcastle, gets a job in Nottingham, which is where she meets Dad. And they're deciding to go on holiday. So she's out on a trip with the kids, and she just dives into a travel agent to pick up a whole load of brochures, which are free. But the kids didn't know that. So she comes walking out with all of these brochures, and this class full of inner city Nottingham kids were going, Miss, let's go, we've got you, let's go. And she's like, what's going on? They're like, we saw you take them, it's okay, we won't tell, but we gotta go.
We've got you back, Miss Moore, we've got you back.
Yeah. She was like, oh, these are free. And they're like, oh, but deep down, like, she couldn't have been prouder that those kids would totally have helped her rob that shop, because that's how much they loved her.
Yeah. So, like, again, there's millions of stories I could tell, and actually I think that I'm a home bird, a massive home bird. So if I'm talking about the people that influence me, I've got a lot of friends, but the small collection of friends that I hold really closely, they've all got something about them that has kind of made me be inspired by them, I suppose. So, but yeah, load them. And then the other question that you asked was pivotal moment in my life.
Pivotal moment. Yeah, I think pivotal moments is a good one when you're trying to think about connecting the dots, isn't it? Like, when you look back over your journey and you go, oh wow, didn't see that come in, and yes, everything was different from that moment.
Yeah. And that's one that I find quite difficult, because I think a lot of things that other people might say pivotal, meeting my partner, having children, doing certain things, they to me have all felt just right, like unquestionably, yeah, almost like you could take it for granted, but not. Like when I met Russ, it was sort of like something about him, and as time went on, you were just like, yeah, he's there, he's mine, he's my other half, like we fit. And same with the kids. We were told in our NCT group that as soon as you give birth, you have this overwhelming sense of this is my baby, and you know, nothing will harm it. And I was really surprised when I had my first and I didn't have that feeling. If I did, it was towards the dog. Like I was really proud of Arnie. You know, he accepted the baby really well. I remember thinking, this is weird, but it was more just because it was right. He was there, and you know, all of those kind of. And
felt right.
I felt right. So I feel quite. Like, what are my big pivotal moments? Like I've had, these are my proud moments.
Yeah.
For example, being, I don't know what you call it in England, but valedictorian or whatever, so that I could speak in the cathedral as part of my graduation. That was a phenomenal moment.
That was 100% rock star. That wasn't just a phenomenal, that was a rock star moment. Like
yeah, that was me peaking. just put that out there. That was as good as it gets. That's my main moment.
But I still rip off your speech and that quote about it's not the moment that defines you, it's how you choose to live within it. Yeah. And you know, the other day when you sent messages around, you know, their quotes that we use, and it was one of those things like, what did you do yesterday? And I couldn't remember anything, so kind of sent you what was front of mind. That should have been the one, because you know, when you're trying to look for something really profound in any moment, so it's I'm writing in a card or some kind of letter or note or to somebody directly, I steal your words because I'm like, I can't come up with anything as profound as that. But it was just phenomenal. And the fact that the entire graduating year was all in that cathedral, and when you finished speaking on behalf of them, they all rose to their feet. It was like a Mexican wave that started at the back of the cathedral and like rocked forward. I was like, wow. Yeah,
I feel like you might be exaggerating that a little bit, but then I was very sort of like, I was so nervous that I was like, I finished, I'm sitting down now.
Yeah.
So I didn't look anyway, so I wouldn't have seen, but I know my friends did, which was nice. But yeah, so there's like my moments that are the proudest, and then I think pivotal moments aren't necessarily your best moments.
Yeah.
So I think accepting help, and this kind of answers one of the questions that we might come to later, which is like being brave and taking risks and whatever. And I think they're some of the biggest moments that I've had. So you speak quite a lot on LinkedIn about being made by dyslexia. Dyslexia is a huge part of who I am. It's part of the best things about me, and it's part of the things that I struggle with the most. And for a long time, because I struggled with it for so long throughout school and beyond, I rejected help, and my sort of response was, why would I need 10% extra time in an exam if I can't spell in an hour and 15 minutes? I'm not going to have to spell in an hour and 30, you know, things like that. And I was just like, back off, leave me to do my thing. And then when I was in my second year of university, I was like, yeah, maybe I will take some of that help, so somebody might sort me out. And it was amazing, like the empowerment of there being somebody that knew why they were there. And it wasn't about going, you're not bright enough. It was totally the opposite. It was just for those skills that I struggled with. So it was about my dissertation, and she would read my dissertation and go, this sounds amazing, I have no idea what you're talking about, however this sentence should be before this sentence in the paragraph, because they couldn't have helped with what you were actually putting in anyway. It was just sort of the skills. And that was empowering to kind of go, actually, I don't have to do it by myself. Nobody's expecting me to. And it's actually holding me back to turn around and not sort of accept that. And when people that you love notice that you're struggling.
Yeah.
So when somebody, honestly, then my partner said to me at one point, I think you need to go to see the doctors because I was having a particularly difficult time. And I was like, really? Like, you think it's at that level? And he was like, absolutely. And that was like turning a light bulb on. And suddenly lots of different things hit, and it was almost like I just needed somebody to turn the light on to see where I was at, for me to then go, I actually see it all in multicolour now. I know what I'm doing. I know where it's unhealthy. I know where I need to get help and where I don't need to get help. And actually, that being at that dip there and realizing it has had a huge effect on everything that I've done since, because you kind of can recognize those warning signs of something's not right, or you're not going down a healthy route, or this isn't what you want. And therefore you change your actions accordingly. And I think it's easier to remember the bad stuff than the good stuff.
There's something really magical as well about, we're talking about being able to connect the dots on the journey that you've been on, and the significance of that is about awareness and a profound understanding of self, but it also then starts to shape the future. And in that moment, Russ being able to do that for you, you know that in the future he can do that for you. So there's almost all of the awareness that came with that experience for yourself. So you now know way more about yourself than you did before that moment. But there's also solace in, if I come to this point again, I've got somebody there that can flick the switch.
And he doesn't say a lot, but when he speaks, it's worth listening to. I always think that about, and
unless
in the same way that
freaking family Christmas quiz and the bugger doesn't shut up because he's getting all the right answers. Like, if you're not on Russ's team, you're losing.
But this is where, just to go off on a tangent, this is where I get cross, because that's half the reason I married him. Like, he should always be in my team because I married him. I have to be with him for the rest of the year. At Christmas, he should be winning quizzes for me. And then you come along with your cheating ways, going, it's boys v girls. Listen, and suddenly he's not on my team anymore.
We don't have enough time for you and I to debate our level of competitiveness, all right? And
there's never enough time. Never enough time.
And frantically, nobody who is maybe, not even listening anymore would want to hear that. So I'm thinking maybe we should move from connecting the dots to kind of working from the inside out. And as I kind of said at the beginning, really, it's one thing to be able to discover and understand your sense of purpose, but that probably then throws up, and we know it does throw up, a whole load of questions for people in terms of, where have I been living in alignment with what's meaningful to me and making a contribution, or actually where are there some really significant gaps? And I guess what we're talking about when we talk about meaning from the inside out is when we truly start to understand our own sense of self-worth, where we start to feel enough, that we are not living to or being defined by necessarily the expectations of what's outside and then working in. We're starting to hold our own sense of value and working from the inside out. So what do you reckon? Where should we start, Beck?
I think now might be a good time to actually share what your purpose statement is. Do you think?
Nice. Yes. Yeah. 100%. I think it's important for people to recognize that there is a belief we have at the Excitable Soul, which is, your purpose statement is kind of the bit of the iceberg that's above the waterline. It's kind of the tip of the iceberg. It's the bit that you can see. It's the bit that you can acknowledge, that feels tangible. But actually, it represents everything that's below the waterline. So it requires work. It requires a level of investment to understand the threads of your life, be able to pull those threads to the fore, and then start to articulate something that feels really clear, that creates a level of confidence, that creates a level of focus, that creates a level of direction, creates a level of courage, creates a level of belief. And for both of us, we are continuing to kind of iterate the words, but the sense is kind of nailed. And so for me, my purpose is to believe in others so that they can believe in themselves and make more things possible in their lives. And that fundamentally comes from the fact that I have a colossal amount of energy. And what I've learned is if I'm able to focus that energy on others, they're able to do things that they didn't think that they could do before. And I've had to massively learn when I've been over focusing that energy and it's not served me or the person that I've been working with. But that's part of understanding how you express your purpose through what you do. But yeah, that's my purpose. What about you?
I've been working on mine, and it's important to say that the stories that we were sharing before, that's the below the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? All of those things are what kind of help make it. So mine, which I think I'm still working on, but as far as we are at the moment, is to be passionately creative in order to captivate and inspire others to see and to feel seen.
Yeah.
And I
how do you feel saying that out loud? As you know, I feel a sense of real confidence in the language that's really starting to shape around this for you. But how do you feel saying it out loud?
I feel better now than when we first came up with it. Like, this is all a learning curve for me. And I felt like it was a bit grand to start off with. But actually what I've found, I don't know whether you guys have siblings, but when your sibling turns out to be right about stuff, it's quite frustrating. But also like exciting at the same time. So I've found since doing this work with James, that everything proves it to be right. So when things have gone well, I'm like, yes. And I'm like, oh, actually, that's totally aligned with my purpose. So that must be right. And then when things have gone wrong and I'm not bothered about it, I kind of go, well, actually, it's got nothing to do with my purpose statement. So maybe actually this is fundamentally who I am, or whatever. So yeah, it's sitting with me better now than maybe when we first did it. It's a confidence in it, and it's road testing it in different situations to see whether actually that's true or not. So.
And I really appreciate you sharing that, because when something is deeply true, owning it can be hard. And that's because it requires a level of truth and confidence and courage. And actually, you know, it's Brené Brown's great saying, isn't it, that vulnerability sounds like truth and looks like courage. And so you're saying your purpose statement out loud, and what you feel is vulnerable, deeply vulnerable. I'm exposed. Here's my soul. And actually, what other people experience is truth and courage. Truth and courage. Yeah. So let's bring more truth and courage. That's what we're after. And all hail Brené Brown, for she is an overlord.
Well, yeah. I've found a lot of learning about myself through getting to know you and doing this work. There's been a lot of self-evaluation, and Brené Brown cuts me deep, man, with her truths. Cuts me really deep.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for you then, James. So how do you make sense of what matters to you? So you've got this statement that you have developed over time, and that is a good tool that we'll talk about as we move forward to help make decisions. But on sort of a day-to-day basis, as things come flying at you, or your experience in the world, how do you make sense of what matters to you?
And I think with all of these things, there are so many different threads to it. There are so many different elements to it. I think where I'm really aligned to my sense of purpose, and where I understand my sense of self-worth and meaning coming from the inside out, you know, comes from you know, a really strong trait of mum's, where almost anything is possible. There's more than one way to do anything. And that can be like anything. I remember that all the kids at school had these Reebok pumps, like back in the early 90s, and they all were wearing the same Reebok pumps, and they were all a fortune, and we didn't have a fortune. But this is mum. So she just went about figuring out another way of being able to do it. And guess who got some Reebok pumps? I did. One was slightly a different shade of white than the other because it had been on display. And and they weren't they weren't the same Reebok pumps as everybody else's. They were cooler than everybody else's. In my opinion, they were cooler than everybody else's. And it was like one of those kind of total rock star moments where I opened up this box going, oh my God, I'm like, how did this happen? How did this happen? It's because she just understood that there's more than one way to do anything. And that the example of that's a really tangible childhood example, but the same things are true even kind of day to day with mum on anything. There is no like nailed down that is just wrong, unless we're talking politics to some degree, but everything is about possibility. And so for me, the way that becomes really meaningful is when I think about the future and I think about what's possible. It's full of opportunity. I see the world through opportunity and possibility, and I entirely have her to thank for that. Seeing the world without limitation is wonderful. It's harsh when the real world slaps you down and goes, yeah, fool, there are some actual boundaries to the way the world works, and it's not just opportunity and possibility. There's some reality. And John, who I mentioned before, has been one of the greatest proponents in my life of realistic optimism. Please, James, realistic optimism. As I, go after Everest and achieve the Peak District. Progress is progress. But so what does that mean in terms of meaningfulness to me, or where do I find meaning and self-worth? It means that I will challenge myself to find different ways to be able to achieve the things that I want to achieve. I played a lot of hockey as a kid, and it would have been a dream to represent Great Britain and go to the Olympics. I'm not good enough at hockey to play for Great Britain and go to the Olympics, but this kind of sense of pride at representing my nation at such a global sporting event was something that kind of was within me, and I found a different way of doing it. I went to the Olympics, but that was supporting actually talented athletes. But then I also got to go to my own world championships and win world championship medals by, finding a sport that nobody else competed in and getting to go and be really good at that, which was whitewater rafting. And I play it down, and I'm kind of overplaying the humility bit because there were professional teams and it was really, really hard for us to achieve what we did. And it was absolutely amazing. But there's always more than one way. So I find meaning in possibility. I find meaning in opportunity. And if I ever feel backed into a corner, if I ever feel railroaded, if I ever feel limited, then I feel a deep disconnection with what's important and what matters to me. And I genuinely have found a huge amount of self-worth in being able to find a different route, being able to go a different way. And when I look back on the journey of getting to where I am now, there are kind of multiple steps, and maybe I'll share a bit of that in the leaps of faith, where I arrived in the same position as other people and the route I took was completely different. So nobody can tell me that there is one way of doing anything. They just can't. Just can't.
I think listening to you say that it's I've seen you do that firsthand, and you are massively underplaying the whitewater rafting thing, because you've forged
the boys from the team are gonna cut me off.
Absolutely, you've forged a path for lots of other people and funding and various different things happening from then, and we're all very, 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 very proud of you for having done that. But also, you don't just do that for yourself. I think that's part of your role. You've made a career out of it, but you've always done that for the people around you that you care for. Like the amount of times that I was at university and you were like, so you make the art, I'm going to be your dealer, or I'm going to be, I'll get you the shows. We'll be famous. We'll sell your art for millions of pounds, and we'll do that, and you're like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. But I love the enthusiasm. But it was like that with everything. It's like that with everything. Like
I love the enthusiasm.
I do love the enthusiasm. I, like you with hockey, was not good enough to sell my work for millions of pounds, but it was really nice that you believed in me. But it's the same for everything, isn't it? You just kind of go, I know I've got a support network around me, and you're a massive part of that, of, you know, go for it, take the leap, do this. You know, you are genuinely passionately believe that you can do anything, and I have that in my ear with you all the time, with whatever opportunities there are. That's a lot of people don't have that at all. So to have that in your life is it's a privilege. So I kind of identify with what you're saying there, being on the receiving end of it as well. That's all right, love.
And I think we could have done it. It was just about finding the right shows. And I was leaning on somebody else. I was leaning on somebody else to help me with that, and it didn't come through. So you know what? I stand by what was possible.
Yeah.
How is your mortgage? Did we make millions? No, we did not.
No, we didn't. It's big. It's a big mortgage. Yeah.
So what about you? Like, when did you become, you know, really aware of the kind of the strongest influences on your sense of self-worth, and, you know, how do you make sense of it, and you know, where are things serving you well and not?
I think I contrast with you quite a bit, actually, in my response to this question. I make sense of what matters to me with obsessive gut feeling. So it's a lot about how it feels. I feel really uncomfortable that maybe I've upset that person, or I feel as though they think I haven't seen them, or that they feel like I haven't given that they aren't loved because I've forgotten to message about something, or I go for a job and I don't feel like I've presented myself properly. Then that gut reaction is, I haven't portrayed myself properly. Not I'm disappointed because I haven't done well, but I haven't explained myself, I haven't expressed myself or shown myself. In the same way that if something goes well, it's that joyous feeling of, look at their reactions, or that kid's nailed that, or I've made something that is so deeply so deeply connected to the person that I've made it for, that they kind of go, it's me, and I go, it is you, I tried for it to be you. Do you know what I mean? Like that, I nailed it, because, you know, you've felt seen. And I'm using the language that's in my purpose statement. I never sort of made those connections before, but I have always gone on gut instinct. So yeah, it's me kind of going, I feel like a lot of the time it's like juggling an awful lot of balls, but that's because they're the things that are important to me. You know, you just kind of go, you've got to let you know, you don't have to be there for every one of those occasions, or you don't have to like work so hard at that. You know, not all of your lessons need to be of that standard or whatever, but actually it's a knock-on effect to the people around me by me doing those things that is what matters to me. You know, I don't ever want not to be there if there's an open evening for my kids, or, you know, if it's fancy dress. It doesn't have to be the best fancy dress thing, but I want them to have been, you know, represented or whatever, because that's contributing to their self-worth, and that's a huge part of sort of what makes me tick. And yeah, it's gut instinct. And for me, the whole self-worth thing goes back to that light bulb being switched on, and knowing when my internal monologue's on my side or whether it's against me. Sure. And that's huge. Like, my brain goes a million miles an hour, and I don't know whether that's partially because of the dyslexia or just who I am, or I've got a multitude of other things that I haven't been diagnosed with, but my brain goes a million miles an hour, and that can be brilliant. That is part of the reason why I'm so creative, because I'm going, this could be the solution, or that could be the solution, or wouldn't it be great if I did this? But when that goes into a negative spiral, that can also be very damaging. So it's that sort of for me now, it's a self-awareness. It's kind of like, what am I saying? Is that a true reflection of what's going on? Do I need a bit of Jimbo's optimism? But that's where, like, I joke about that, but that's where I would phone you, or I would speak to us, or I would speak to mum and dad, because you are my solid sounding guards, where you kind of go, my gut instinct doesn't necessarily feel right, so I need to talk to somebody who knows me deeply for that to happen.
What about, you know, you talked about that kind of inner voice, and, you know, where it's on your side. You know, how does it affect your self-worth when it's not on your side?
Oh, massively. but then it would to anybody. You know, it's the voice that speaks loudest, isn't it? You know, like, you can be saying lovely things to me, like, let's make millions and let's do whatever, but if you're in a head's going, you're not good enough, or, you know, he's just your brother, because sometimes that is how it works.
And it's true.
And it's true. Yeah.
The brother bit. Sorry, not the good enough bit. Wow.
Yeah. Well, cut me deep. Yeah, so in that sense, and now I'm aware of it, so you just kind of go, hang on a second, pipe down, inner Irving, and turn it around. And now that you've got your purpose statement as well, you can kind of go, actually boil it down. Was that actually as bad as you think it was, or what were the good things that came out of that? And or you're really nervous about that, or how that landed, but actually, why are you? What is it that you're actually worried about here? And a lot of sort of Brené Brown's prompts and what she talks about, armor and various things like that, that I'm so very aware of things like that now as well. So it when I say that my dyslexia is one of my biggest strengths and a big weakness, I feel like the way that my brain works, it's not just being dyslexic, is that sort of, you know, it can make you incredibly on point with what you say, but that can be cutting as well, can't it?
Yeah,
because you can say just the right things that are hurtful. I don't do it to other people. Just to point out, I'm not really cutting with other people. It's just inside my head. I'm a nice person. I am.
Well, I think that's, you know, that's the significance of it, isn't it? Is that we say things to ourselves that we would never dream of saying to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so then you are attacker and victim in equal measure. So you lose twice in those scenarios. Yeah. And I think this you know, this opportunity for all of us to discover and align with a sense of purpose is that, you know, you're talking about intuition. There's some really brilliant science around the power of intuition. Like, your cognitive brain has the capacity to hold a finite amount of things, like your short-term memory or your working memory. You're talking about anywhere between 1 and, you know, 40, 50 things in those, you know, cognitive processes in your brain. Yet your body is receiving millions of bits of information every second and feeding that to your brain. So which one has more data? You know, it's like, I'm a dyslexic and I understand that maths. One far outweighs the other. And so the greater level of insight and intuition we have, it's just about interpreting a different and probably more powerful form of data. And where purpose is critical is emotional conviction. It aligns intellectual clarity with emotional conviction. And when you put those two things side by side and focus them in the same direction, like the power that has for us to be able to go, shut the up, voice, because this conversation has no bearing on what matters here.
Yeah.
And I can say that,
or what is it that you're trying to protect yourself from?
Nice, way better question.
That's you know, because it comes from something, doesn't it? It comes from not wanting to be vulnerable. And why is that? Because it could have a great outcome and you're frightened of that, or is it because you've had a really bad experience and you don't want to go down that rabbit hole again? You know, it's good intentioned, even though it comes out not very nice sometimes, but you know, it's just kind of how.
So I'm kind of conscious of our time, and I think we should dive into the kind of the third and final part here around leaps of faith. You know, this is really where, you know, having some people have a defined and articulated sense of purpose, and for others it's there and it's guiding us, but we might not have wrapped words around it, but ultimately it's still the same sense of purpose. And what we're interested in here is where what's meaningful to you has guided your choices, and you've done things that you didn't necessarily think that you could or would be possible, and actually the outcome created a leap forward for you. This I've got to be honest, of all of the steps, like I'm a purpose geek, so I love all of this. Like, I love everything that sits within it. But there is, it speaks to what's possible in me, and the opportunity, the idea of taking leaps of faith that are founded on something that, you know, has this level of kind of conviction and allows us to go into the unknown, like hack uncertainty and go into the unknown. That's where I get really giddy about the possibility of purpose and the impact that it has on people's lives. So yeah, where should we kick off in this bit?
I think that you have lots of tangible examples of where you've genuinely leapt forward through taking leaps of faith, and it would be good to share some of those to start off with. So when I'm going to ask you the question, so when were moments of your greatest courage in the choices that you've made about the life that you wanted to lead, and where has it taken you?
Yeah, it's interesting because there are kind of layers to this, and there are some of the tangible ones feel like big shifts, but some of the smaller ones that are more kind of emotive might not have created as big obvious shift, but were way harder to kind of come to terms with. So I think there are just a couple of really simple moments in time where feeling that sense of more is possible, let's go after it, came. I think one had a couple of career moments that have just helped me take steps that I didn't think were possible. One is going from being an administrator in a national governing body, just kind of typing in data, to applying for a job at the English Institute of Sport, which has just become UK Sports Institute, I believe. I hope I got that right, because it literally changed last week. Who work with Olympic and Paralympic athletes and coaches to get them to all major competitions. Right, they're a phenomenal organisation that has just literally grown its impact over the course of the last 20 years. And so we're talking 15 plus years ago, when I was kind of going through this process, they were looking for a services manager. And I remember reading the thing going, ooh, I don't know anything about this organization. Ooh, they sound really cool. One of the prerequisites is I have a sports science degree. Just cool. I can cross that one. They're definitely looking for somebody more experienced than me, but nobody wants to work in sport more than I do. So let's go. I had no right to apply for that job. None. I certainly had no right for anybody to read that application, but I like naively just poured my heart into the covering letter. And this was, you know, back in the day when people read covering letters and it wasn't just all automated. I got an interview. Fucking hell, got an interview. What do I do now? So I went and I gave it my best shot. And at the end of that interview, I came away going, I definitely gave it my best shot. I definitely represented myself as best as I possibly could. And they are not going to give me this job because they are looking for somebody with more experience. That was totally my reflection. And then a few days later, I get this call saying, yeah, we want you to come for a second interview. I was like, okay, ace, great, brilliant, top banana, let's do that. So I went for the second interview, and it was meeting more of the team, and that went really well. And then they phoned me back again and went, so we've got a third interview for you. And I just went, I'm just wondering, every time I've come away from these interviews, it's been really great. I know I don't have the experience that you're looking for. That's clear every single time. How many more steps are there in this process? And they went, and the lady who was recruiting me, Tara Smith, who is one of those people that I have to be thankful for making just step change in my life, for her having faith and belief in me, just turned around and went, we really like you and we think you've got something to offer here, but you are not experienced enough for the job that we've advertised. So we're changing the job role and we're just trying to figure that out. And that means you have to speak to some other people for us to make that happen. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stop asking questions. When did you want to see me again? She was like, yes, good lad.
Yes, I'll be
Turn
there,
up on this day. I think I actually, after my second interview, walked down the corridor with her and went, I know that you're looking for somebody with more experience, but if there is another job comes up at any point in time, please keep me in mind. It's a definite talk less moment, Glover. But yeah, the outcome of that was I got this 9-month maternity cover role. And I left the institute 8 years later, having worked the Beijing cycle, the London Olympic cycle, and the beginning of the Rio cycle. And I only left, having blagged my way in, I only left because of another leap of faith, which took me on again. And given the guests that we have coming up, there'll be some of that conversation to share, I'm sure. But again, if I was going through any kind of traditional route, I wouldn't have gotten that job if I hadn't just taken the leap of faith in that moment and said, well, why not? I wouldn't have had all of those experiences. And so it's really difficult for me when people feel like a sense of limitation, because I've had these experiences where I know it's to the contrary, and that is my naivety. Well, it's not naivety now because I'm old. It's learned blindness that in my head that works in every situation. So why shouldn't you try it out? And it didn't work in every situation for me. You can't blag your way into the RAF, but that's totally another story. Definitely tried to get the job that I wanted in the RAF when I didn't meet the criteria that they were asking for, while in the selection centre at Cranwell, and then was devastated when I got rejected at the board. And I don't know why. There are certain circumstances where these things don't work, and that's what you learn. But it doesn't take away from what I believe is possible. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a little bit of an insight around a leap of faith for me.
I think there's also I think using naivety was the wrong word, but I do think there's something special about you. I think that this can apply to everybody. I do think it can apply
special
to everybody.
Needs, yes.
Yeah, I think it can apply to everybody, and that there are leaps of faith that you need to take in your life that will take you in whichever direction. But there's definitely, there's definitely something about you that would make people go, yeah, it's worth taking a.
Well, I think for me, the bit that feels important for those that are listening to kind of hear, as far as leaps of faith are concerned, is that we live in a volatile and uncertain world. Nobody saw a pandemic coming. Nobody was seeing the rate of inflation that's risen in the way that it has, and the cost of living. Like, people just aren't seeing that coming. We're reactively trying to deal with it in the moment, and that makes things really, really difficult, because we love a bit of certainty as human beings. We don't like change. We're really, really good at it, but we really don't like it. We avoid it at all costs. And the thing that can make volatility, the thing that makes uncertainty, the thing that can make change far more simple, real, direct, meaningful, is a sense of purpose, because it enables you to go into the unknown. And so leaps of faith really are about going into the unknown. And so, is there something about me? Well, that would be really cool if there was. But there is also just this sense of, well, when you know what's significant to you, when you know the contribution that you want to make, when you have a sense of what the impact of that contribution could be, and you feel that intuitive conviction towards it, it doesn't feel so scary going into the dark room.
Yeah, I take what you're saying. And also, leaps of faith are very are lots of different sizes, aren't they? So a leap of faith could be a huge change in your life, but it could be having that conversation with your boss that you've been putting off, or standing up and saying something in a pivotal moment that could just change the way that you're seen, or give you an opportunity, or all of those kind of things. And you don't have to necessarily want the world to make a huge impact in the life that you've got, or the experience that you've got, or to have a huge impact in somebody else's life. It's very much so a different lens that you use depending on what those desires are, and that's kind of where it does fit for everybody.
You're the one that reminds me often that sense of purpose should never be a stick that somebody can beat themselves with. It should only be a way of creating possibility, and that feels like exactly the right message for people to hear. That there are people in the world that have these massive and really clear sense of purposes that they want to live out, and they know it really clearly and from an early age, and it is about transforming things that are massive. Greta Thunberg, yes let's have as many of those in the world as we possibly can, but that doesn't have, not everybody has to do that just because it's clear and massive and she's made progress against it doesn't mean that what she's doing is what everybody has to do at all. Like, purpose for each of us can be really, really small. Like, I've been working with some people where they started to understand the significance of the bubble that they'd created at home, which was about, their partner and their children, and actually the role that they played in establishing but maintaining that bubble. And it was about, purpose isn't about anybody else. So it wasn't about the partner and it wasn't about the children, but their contribution was the environment that they created around them and for them, and what were the impact of that was what was possible for these guys within that environment. And that meant that they got up every morning and went to work and it wasn't necessarily a job that inspired them, but it didn't need to, because they found meaning in the work because of what was sense of purpose for them in kind of creating and maintaining this environment. And that, to your point, that's what makes it real for everybody. And I think probably on that note, Rebecca, that we should probably pause there as introduction to the Excitable Soul and the podcast that is going to be coming. Our guests are going to be put in a situation where we're going to ask them to talk about all of those same areas, and hopefully gain some really rich insight that we can all learn from, that we can all take away, that might spark a little bit of inspiration for each of us to go, I didn't know that was possible, or that could be done in that way, or that's what actual meaningness looks and feels like. So thank you for being in it with me. This has been really cool. And I'm excited for the next one.
Me too, very much so. I feel a bit more confident moving forward. It's been a good introduction.
Amazing. Thanks, Beck.
Massive thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul podcast. If you are interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your sense of purpose, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.